Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Zach here. Today I'm going to be talking about the brand new Scoob movie that released last Friday. Now, I'm going to be talking about this with the fact in mind that it was a children's movie. A good children's movie at that. But it also appealed to fans of the Scooby-Doo franchise, such as myself and other people in my family. My older brother, who's 23, loved the movie. So we're going to be talking about critics and what they're saying about a children's movie. Now, obviously, the movie's super straightforward, it's very easy to understand, and it's a lot of fun to watch. So now we're going to be talking about the critics' reviews and what the critics were saying. So, I'm going to be defending the movie, obviously, so let's talk about it. So for some reason, it's not scaled correctly, which is pretty weird. But here we go. You only really need to see this part, so let's see. It's really no better or worse than other selections from the genre it's part of. That slice of fast-paced, brightly colored kids movie that makes no pretense of being anything other than an adequate distraction for young attention spans. She's complaining that a kids movie was made for kids. There's no logic in that, and there's nothing that to really bring to the table when giving a review like this, along with this review. A confounding and convoluted origin story to a pretty straightforward Saturday morning cartoon. So, if you watched Scoob yourself, obviously this woman didn't, because if you watched Scoob yourself, I actually own the movie. I bought it when it came out. And the origin story of the movie is only about not even 10 minutes long. It's the introduction to the movie. The movie starts with, spoilers ahead here, the movie starts with Scooby-Doo stealing a gyro and running into Shaggy. That's all it consists of. A convoluted origin story is complete BS. This woman obviously didn't watch the movie, because the only origin story that there is the 10 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, not even 10 minutes of the beginning of the movie. And I've seen this movie about 3 times now. And so that's not a confounding, convoluted origin story. You're just stupid. Now, the rest of the movie, I guess it could be up for debate. I enjoyed the movie myself. It's by no means a perfect movie, of course. I think that it was well written. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it was really funny. I thought it portrayed the characters really well. The only thing I had a problem with was that they had Will Forte instead of Matthew Lillard play Shaggy. And Matthew Lillard, if you don't know, is the original voice of Shaggy other than Casey Kasem. So Matthew Lillard was the actor from the 2 live-action Scooby-Doo movies. And he also voices Shaggy regularly in Scooby-Doo. In Be Cool Scooby-Doo, Scooby-Doo Mystery Inc., and What's New Scooby-Doo. He was always Shaggy. And that's interesting because they completely went a different direction and chose Will Forte. So some people here have a brain. So, like this guy. There is a very funny, snarky inside humor highlighted by high-level reimagining of the Scooby-Doo Where Are You TV opening. Fun for the whole family and us old-timers. So this guy also understands, like me, that the movie is for kids and it appeals to the fans of Scooby-Doo. Now, obviously, that's very easy to understand. And I think this woman's trying to come up with this, like, oh, it's not artistic enough. It's not that good. It's not like Moonlight, where it's just such a good no, like, it's a kid's movie, alright? There's no convoluted origin story. The movie starts with Scooby-Doo stealing a gyro. I'll say that again. Or a euro. I don't know how you want to pronounce it, but that's how it starts. And after that, they run into Velma, Daphne, and Fred. And then the movie actually starts, where they're talking to Simon Cowell. Now, it's a good movie. I think, honestly, in my opinion, it's a good movie. A lot of people agree with me. A lot of the fans agree with me. It was a quality film. It was a fun film, and it was very good. Honestly, in my opinion, I would probably give it a 7 out of 10. It wasn't perfect, but it was a lot of fun, and it's definitely rewatchable. There's a lot of Easter eggs for fans to notice, like there's a couple Hex Girl posters from What's New Scooby-Doo, and it's there's a lot of fun to be found, and I don't understand what this person is saying by it's to a pretty straightforward Saturday morning cartoon. Yes, Scooby-Doo is pretty straightforward, but actually over the years we've actually developed the story of Scooby-Doo. And I mean, it's not something that you should really be like exploring the lore into. It's not like Destiny 2 or like Destiny or Doom or something. It's not something that's super lore filled that you should be looking into. But at the same time, Scooby-Doo has an interesting lore behind it. I mean, there's so many different timelines and everything that it does get a little bit confusing. So it's not as straightforward as you would think. Scooby-Doo has a lot of intricate characters that you have to recognize, and a lot of character development arcs that you also need to recognize. Like Shaggy, he got braver as the first season of Scooby-Doo Where Are You went on, and by season 2, he was brave enough that they actually ended up ending the show because they didn't know what to do with Shaggy or Scooby, because they were too brave now and that it wasn't as funny for them anymore. But with the reboot and everything of What's New Scooby-Doo, they brought a great like kind of energy to the show, and they made it a lot of fun to watch. They introduced new characters, and it was a lot of fun, along with Mystery Incorporated, where it was all centered in one town, and it was really cool because it was all the town that they lived in, they all went to high school in and everything, so it was all centered there. So yes, it's straightforward, but it's not as straightforward as you think. Mystery Inc. is probably the most complicated season out of every single Scooby-Doo. It actually has a lot of interdeveloping storylines, which I think is really cool for especially Scooby-Doo, a children's cartoon. Now, once you start watching this as a child, you really don't give it up, obviously, unless you want to. Me, myself, I still love Scooby-Doo. I always will love Scooby-Doo. And I have all of the seasons on Blu-ray. That doesn't mean I'm not going to grow up and find a new love for different film or TV shows. My favorite TV show is The Office. Surprise, surprise. It's like everyone's favorite TV show. I find it hilarious. My favorite movie is Return of the Jedi, but that's always been my favorite movie. But my other favorite movie is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly with Clint Eastwood, which is also a phenomenal movie. Now, just because this person doesn't share the same view with people who are fans and people who actually understand Scooby-Doo and understood the movie and actually watched it, they give it a bad review. And this person, Allison Wilmore and Christy Lemire, have completely gone off base here and completely no clue what they're talking about. And another review here, which I'll show you now. While mildly amusing and excitingly animated, the film misses out on making anything special about a new Scooby-Doo mystery, partially because there's no real mystery. So, like, Scooby-Doo, alright, has not always been about mysteries. Like, yeah. I mean, okay, yes, I guess you consider it's always been about mysteries, finding out, like, who's under the mask. But there was a real mystery, and the mystery was everything with Peritas and Alexander the Great, which I thought was a cool storyline because that was something I was not expecting at all. I think a lot of people weren't expecting. They were like, what? That makes no sense. So a lot of people were kind of like, whoa, that's crazy. And it was amusing for them, and it was enjoyable. So the mystery was like, what's gonna happen with Scooby-Doo? Like, what's the story behind Scooby-Doo? And like, it's not even an origin story. All it tells us is that he's related to Peritas, Alexander the Great's dog. Let's see another one. A big, loud, dumb crossover event that's considerably less than the sum of its parts. Peter Canavies. So, looking at this, this is another review that I think is really bad. It's the movie's, I don't know what he means by a big, loud, dumb movie. The movie's hilarious. It's a great movie. I don't know what he means by it being big and loud and dumb. I thought the animation was phenomenal. I thought the humor was great. It was actually, there was a lot of humor that appealed to adults too. There's plenty of adult jokes thrown in there. Of course there was. It's a children's movie. They're always going to sprinkle some adult jokes in there. And it's, I guess, it's not a crossover, because there was no established franchise before this of the movie, so technically it's not a crossover. They did use other Warner Brother properties, such as Blue Falcon, Captain Caveman, and Dick Dastardly, I guess, because those were already established characters in Warner Brothers franchise, and they did want to bring them to the silver screen. And my parents, when they watched it, they were like, "Oh, is that Blue Falcon, or is that?" Or my mom freaked out when she saw Dynamite. My dad freaked out when he saw Captain Caveman. Like, it's cool. It's really cool to be introducing these characters into a big movie, a big budget movie of a really big IP. So you can't say it's a big, loud, dumb crossover where it's not loud. I don't know what he's talking about. The man needs to turn on his television. There's not one scene in the movie where I thought it was too loud. I thought the audio work was absolutely incredible. They always kept it at a good volume. And even when parts where it was supposed to be loud, like, yeah, you understood that it was loud, but it didn't get so loud that you actually need to turn down your TV. It's not one of those movies where it's just like, oh, you need to turn up your TV because you can't hear the dialogue, but you need to turn down your TV when there's an explosion. It's not one of those movies. Like, a movie that I would consider does that a lot would be John Wick. John Wick has a lot of explosions and gunshots. Sometimes you need to turn down the movie because of the gunshots and explosions, but sometimes you need to turn up the volume to hear the dialogue. And that's understandable. That can happen sometimes with movies. But you can't say this is a big, loud, dumb crossover without actually being a fan of the franchise and understanding what the movie is actually about. There's no underlying message. There's no storyline other than... not storyline. There's no underlying message other than friendship. And it's just a good, lighthearted movie that makes you feel good, and it makes everyone feel good. I sat down and I watched it with my family, my niece, and my dog, and it was a great time. I haven't had that much fun in a while, or watching a movie at least. And to say it's dumb, it's a children's movie, man. So let's also remember that this is a grown adult. Alright? This is probably the same guy. He probably enjoyed the movie. I wouldn't doubt that he enjoyed the movie, but since he's a connoisseur of movies, he's probably just like, oh, it's not my taste. It's not fancy enough. It's not a drama. It doesn't have enough dialogue. The movie's hilarious. The movie's great. It has enough dialogue. It keeps you entertained for hours. And honestly, I give the movie a 7 out of 10. I thought it was an incredible movie, and a lot of these critics are giving really dumb reviews just because it was a children's movie. So that just cracks me up because, I mean, it's a children's movie. And even my girlfriend, who wasn't even a fan of Scooby-Doo until last year when I started dating her, and I showed her Scooby-Doo for the first time, actually, for our first date. And yes, I'll admit this on camera. For our first date, actually, we went out to eat. We got some Chipotle, and then we went back to my house and we watched some Scooby-Doo. And we had a blast, absolutely. She loved it, and she's a huge fan of it now. And when I showed her the movie, she absolutely loved it. She thought it was hilarious. She fell in love with it. And she enjoyed it. And she's someone that also isn't, like, into movies like that. She's someone who enjoys dramas more than action movies or comedies. And she'd rather watch probably Lady Bird or Little Women rather than The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which is a movie I would definitely prefer. Or she would rather watch Emma over Star Wars. Like, that's just how it is. But she still had an appreciation for this movie because it was a good movie. And my girlfriend is a fan of Star Wars and a fan of the Avengers and everything. She loves those movies, but she has a preference. This guy obviously has a preference, but he's too afraid to actually ignore the preference for a second and actually dive into a different genre of movie because he doesn't have that kind of taste. And the genre of movie that this is, it's an animated comedy, it's a kids film, and it's absolutely hilarious, it's great, and I don't know why people are complaining so hard about it. I mean, there's nothing really to complain about. It's a children's movie. I keep repeating myself because there's nothing I can really say to kind of like just tell you how bad your reviews are because the film is not a masterpiece. Yeah, film masterpiece I would consider is, once again, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It's a cinematic masterpiece. But this is a comedy movie about a talking dog. That's an established franchise for years. You can't you can't say it's a loud, dumb crossover when in the first place this is its first animated feature on the silver screen, when only Scooby-Doo had established movies that were 2D animated and only came out on DVD. Yep, that's it. See ya.